I'm Mrs. Arnold, I'm 36.
I'm Pedro, I'm 18.
I'm Amanda, I'm 17.
I'm Jesus, I'm 17.
Have you ever been lied to by a close friend or family member? It sucked, didn't it? Now imagine falling in love or adoring someone with your whole heart, only to find out that their entire existence was based on a web of lies. According to a recent survey I sent out, not many of you listening today have ever been catfished or been lied to by a person you didn't or barely knew. I'm here today to tell you that the dangers of catfishing are more present than you may think. During the summer of 2020, I was catfished. I understand the betrayal, the hurt, and the need to prevent others from being catfished as well. Today, I will not only be warning you of the dangers of being catfished, but I will also show you how to avoid being catfished. First, I will talk about the problems and the dangers of being catfished. Some being kidnapped, taken to sex rings or drug rings, death, etc. Second, I will talk about my own personal story of being catfished and why catfishers are led to deceive others. Third, I will talk about how to avoid being catfished, as well as to how to deal with the catfisher. Our first topic of the day is the dangers of being catfished. Catfishers pose many psychological and physical dangers to their victims. According to an article on Pinot.com titled Catfishing Investigation Tips, Risks, Signs, and What to Do, accessed electronically on October 28, 2020. Some of the dangers of being catfished include emotional damage, public embarrassment, identity theft, blackmail, child exploitation, credit card theft, extortion, cyberbullying, fraud, physical harm, and many more. Other dangers under physical harm would include being kidnapped, taken to a drug or sex ring, or being killed. Catfishers typically lure in their victims on social media or on an online platform of some sorts. Once they have lured in their prey, they typically focus on making their victims feel safe, secure, and loved. Essentially, they are brainwashing their victims into a state where they are content. This summer when I was catfished, my catfisher instructed me to write 25 date ideas in this journal. In it, he had me put specific ones underneath free, less than $50, more than $50, and specific restaurants that we wanted to visit together. By doing this, he was convincing me that he actually wanted a life with me. I was totally convinced. Usually catfishers target younger people, seeing as they are more susceptible to their trickery. Younger generations are easier to trick because they are naive and they do not have the knowledge or experience that older generations have. According to an article on TeenVogue.com, written by journalist Elizabeth Corcione, titled 9 Signs You're Being Catfished, accessed electronically on October 28, 2020. There are 9 main signs that the person online may be a catfisher. These signs are they won't pick up a phone call, they don't have many followers or friends, their story doesn't add up, they're using someone else's photos, their only photos are professionally done, they're reluctant to meet in real life or even video chat, they ask you for money, or something just feels off. These signs are major red flags that the person on the other side of the device may be a catfisher. These are the main dangers of catfishers, as well as signs to recognize a catfisher. Now that we have talked about the dangers of catfishing, let's talk about my own personal story. There are many reasons why catfishers fool people. Some are looking for money, for friends or lovers, or just seriously sick. In my case, it was a mixture of the last two. My story begins on May 2020 at a Brandon. I had met a girl that I quickly became friends with. Later on, she gave my Snapchat info to one of her friends, who in turn gave it to another friend. This friend was my catfisher. Juan Garcia told me that he was 17. He was in fact 27 years old. He told me that we had met at the branding. This was one of his few things that he told me that were actually true. We had indeed met at the branding, but he was a cousin of the girl that I first became friends with. At first, I was enthralled with Juan. He was everything I was looking for. Tall, handsome, a Christian man, and the same political views as me. Then the red flags started to fly up. Juan almost never wanted to start a phone call, and whenever I initiated one, he would never answer. Within the first few days of the total 12 days of dating, he began to shower me in gifts. A promised necklace for his future wife, a promised ring that his mother had apparently given him, a Clydesdale reject horse, and many more gifts were showered upon me. Eventually, I got him talked into calling, but he would never turn on his camera unless it was facing away from him. Every time I tried to meet up with him, he would either ditch the day up or an excuse would come up. However, I never asked to meet alone with him. I always chose to meet in a large area where there were many people around or with my parents. As he and I talked more, however, his backstory began to not line up wherever I checked. As it turned out, Juan Garcia was the hired hand from our friend's branding. It was was deduced that my catfisher decided to target me because he was sick in the mind and couldn't face the reality that he was an old, ugly man. However, this isn't the only reason why catfishers target people. Some use it as a means to lure people into their fantasy world and away from their family. Others use it as a means to gain money off of unsuspecting victims. Typically, catfishers are always looking to gain something out of it, be it money, a lover, or a kidnapped victim. Now that we've talked about my backstory and why catfishers deceive people, we will talk about ways to avoid being catfished or how to get out of a situation if you are being catfished. There are many ways to catch a catfisher in action. While they may be clever about luring a victim in, they're typically awful at covering up their tracks. An article on Medium.com, written by journalist M. Lindy, published April 15, 2019, titled Tips to Avoid Getting Catfished Online, gives a series of tips for readers to use to avoid being catfished. These tips are true to first Google image search. This one was a huge helper for me. Be wary of love-struck admirers, ask your friends, video call, or meet sooner rather than later, and to use common sense and trust your instincts. In order to catch my catfisher, I used all 5 of these tips. When Juan and I were together, I trusted my instincts. Something felt off, and I wasn't fully at peace with my decision to date him. He would never turn on his camera unless it was facing away from him whenever we talked. I asked my friends and family constantly what they thought of him. When he started saying, "I love you," before a week of dating had even passed, I knew something was up. When we found out that Juan's backstory didn't line up, I knew something was seriously wrong. It was only when I reverse Google image searched the pictures that he had sent me that I realized I had been catfished. According to an article on BitRebels.com by M. High, published on January 24, 2020, titled Social Media Security, The Problem of Catfishing, if you are being catfished, you should, quote, block this person from your social media accounts and dating apps. Your best bet is to simply walk away and try to move past it, unquote. If you are feeling threatened by a catfisher, however, or being blackmailed, you should call the police and file a report. In most cases, however, it's best to just simply walk away from the entire thing, as BitRebels.com said. I walked away from my catfisher, and I haven't looked back since. Today, we have talked about the dangers of catfishers, which are numerous and range from having money stolen to being abducted and or killed. We also talked about my personal experience on being catfished this last summer, as well as why catfishers are led to deceive people. Finally, we talked about ways to recognize a catfisher and how to deal with them. Now that you know the dangers of being catfished, I implore you to not add anyone you don't know on social media. Also, meet up with unfamiliar people in large groups or with a bunch of your friends. Do not put yourself in a situation where you are at risk. As Confucius once said, "He who learns but does not think is lost. He who thinks but does not learn is in great danger." By being aware of your surroundings, both physical and social media ones, you are not only protecting yourself, but also those around you.